Masechet Ketubot Daf Pe Bet. With this daf, we complete the 8th perek of Masechet Ketubot. We're dealing with a case of a woman who's married and the man dies without children, and now she falls to the Avam. What happens to the first brother, the deceased husband's estate? Well, the Avam inherits it. That's the law. However, even though he inherits it, he's not allowed to access it. He cannot take any of the money. He cannot even sell any of the land because it's all designated. There's a lien on it to eventually pay the Yevamah's ketuvah when that marriage ends. We saw a very interesting story. It happened in Pupedita of a Yevamah. In such a case, she falls to the Yavam. The Yavam would like to do Yibum and inherit the property, but there's a younger brother that does not want that to happen because he wants half of his brother's estate. So he wants his brother to have to do chalitza. Therefore, the younger brother goes and tries to give her a get, so that the Yevamah will be disqualified from doing Yibum, and that way he'll get half the property. The older brother finds out about this, says, don't do that, don't give her a get. What's your problem? You want to get half the estate? I'll give you half the estate, and then I'll do Yibum. Just don't give her a get. And so he goes again and does Yibum, and then the rabbis rule, and they say, sorry, you did not have the authority to give away the property. The Yavam cannot sell the land of the estate because it's all put away, designated for the ultimate payment of the ketuvah. So even though he promised it to you, he didn't have a right to promise it to you. So sorry, younger brother, you don't get half of it, and the Yavam got the whole thing. Okay, that was a great story. Now we're going to have a repeat, a follow-up. This story happened in Mata Mersiyah, but the same thing. A man died without children. The Yavamah falls to the Yavam. There was a younger brother that wanted to give the Yavamah a get. Giving a get does not actually separate it. Only chalitza can do it, but it is strong enough to make it that none of the brothers can do yibum anymore after that. He did that because he wanted the older brother to do chalitza, and once he does chalitza, then all the brothers share the estate equally. Amale ma'datich. So the older brother who wanted to do yibum says, what is your opinion? Why are you doing this? If you're concerned about the estate and you want half, no problem. I will give you half. But the younger brother heard already about the case of Pumpedita, and he says, I am afraid that you will do to me like was done in Pupedita with those swindlers that the older brother promised the younger brother and never gave it. I mean, in that case, it looks like the brother wanted to give, but he couldn't. He was stuck. The rabbi said he wasn't able to. I mean, I guess the older brother could have given from his own money because he promised it, but he didn't have to. So the younger brother over there felt he was tricked. And so here also, in Marta Marsiyah, the younger brother says, I don't trust you. I know what's going to happen. The rabbi is going to say, you don't have to pay. You're never going to pay me. I'm going to go ahead and give the get. The older brother says, I'll tell you what, if you want, I will divide it from now. In other words, we'll make a kinyan from now. And so you will already acquire half of the estate, and that way it's yours. It's yours already from now. So, they think that's better. Turns out that doesn't really help. Amar mor barav asher, afagav dechi ata rav dimi amar bi Yochanan. Hamelech habelo, lech umeshoch parazo, velo tiye kenuya lecha, ela lachar sheloshim yom, yom kana, vafilu omedet ba'agam. So Rav Asher says, even though we do have a law that says you can make a kinyan earlier, that will apply later in different conditions. For example, here, someone says to his friend, go and pull this cow, and the way that you acquire an animal is you pull it in your domain. So go pull it now, and right now it is in your domain, but I'm stipulating that the acquisition will not happen now. It's not going to be yours yet. I don't want you to have it right now. I just want to guarantee that you will have it, but it will be yours in 30 days. And now, when 30 days comes, it works. It's already his. He doesn't have to do any other action. Even if the cow is standing in the middle of a meadow, a place where he cannot acquire a cow. The person acquiring can only acquire the cow if he pulls it in his own property or some secluded area that he shows is his. The middle of a meadow doesn't work. That's still okay. Even though eventually, after 30 days, when the transfer actually happens, it's in the middle of the meadow, nevertheless, the action from beforehand works. So even though that is true in general, but that's not the same as our case. Hatam biyado, hacha la biyado. In that case, it was the owner, the original owner of the cow. It was in his power to give it over and transfer it to the buyer. And so, therefore, since it was in his power to give it over throughout that time period, so now it works. He does the action now, and it triggers and comes into effect after 30 days. But in our case of the Yevama, it's not in his power. The older brother, the Yavam, does not have the power to sell it. And so therefore, even though he's making a kinyan from beforehand, nevertheless, since that kinyan will not take effect even after they're married, because the Yavam has no authority to give it over, and therefore it doesn't work. So maybe he was convincing. We don't know the end of the story, whether the younger brother agreed to it or not. But if he did agree not to give a get, he still would not get half the estate. Okay, and now that we know that, we just have a quick contradiction between this statement of Rabbi Yochanan and another one that he said. Ki ata Rabin amar Rabbi Yochanan. In Bavel, we received the statements of Rabbi Yochanan from Eretz Yisrael through Ravin, who went back and forth. Rabbi Yochanan said, Lo kaneh, that after 30 days, the very same case, he does a transfer now. In 30 days, it's in the middle of a meadow. Rabbi Yochanan said the acquisition does not work. So what's going on? I thought he said it works. Now he said it doesn't work. The first statement is when he said, even though it didn't say it here, we're adding it in. He said, go and pull on the cow now, and it will be yours in 30 days retroactively from now. So therefore, when he pulls the cow now, he doesn't get it. And the next 30 days, but in 30 days, it will retroactively have been his. So by adding the retroactive clause, that means since it's from the time of the pulling, and at the time of the pulling, it was in the buyer's domain, so then the acquisition works. Whereas if he doesn't say retroactively from now, well, then that action is only going to apply after the 30 days, and that after the 30 days, it's in the middle of a meadow. In that case, it won't work. Okay, now, next question. Ba'u mineh me'ula. Ula was asked, Yibem ve'achad kach chilek mahu. Lo asa ve'lo kelum. Chilek ve'achad kach yibem mahu. Lo asa ve'lo kelum. So it's two questions. Number one, does it matter any order? Let's say the same case, a man dies without children. His estate goes to the Yavam. So let's say the Yavam does Yibum, and only afterwards he divides the property with his brother. Like a same case where he told the brother, don't give a get and I will give you half. Does it work? So if he does Yibum first, so once he does Yibum, he has more access, more control over the estate because he now acquires it. He inherits it. So can he divide it after the Yibum? And he answered no. And now they also asked Ula, what if he divided it first while she was Shomeret Yavam, before they do Yibum? In that case, he actually has less access to it because it's still a limbo. He may do Chalitza, and then it will go to a different route of inheritance. And he does Yibum after. Does that transfer of splitting it up with his brother work? And he answers no. Lo asa ve'lo kulum. It doesn't work in either case. question on this. Matkif larav sheshat hashta yibem v'achar kachilek lo asa velo chilum chilek v'achar chibem mibaya. We don't understand the order of these things. If he already was asked the question and answered that if you do yibum first, where the yavam has greater access to it, and divides it after the yibum, and it doesn't work, then all the more so the other way around. If he does a division first when it's not even his yet, because it didn't do yibum, and then does yibum, of course it won't work. So why was he asked the question twice? And the answer is Shnei Ma'asim Havu. Actually, these were two separate occasions that actually happened. It wasn't a theoretical discussion. If it was theoretical discussion and he asked one, then you would know automatically the other. But it happened to be this one happened first, and he gave the answer, and then some similar case happened sometime later, and he gave the answer to that case, and it happened to be the other way around. And that's why he gave two answers to two different cases. Ki ata, Rabin amar Resh Lakish, ben yibem v'achar kach chilek, ben chilek v'achar kach yibem, lo asa v'lo chilum, v'ilchata lo asa v'lo chilum, and reiterating and emphasizing the conclusion. Resh Lakish also said, doesn't matter what order, whether he did yibum first and then gave away half, tried to give away half, or he gave away half to his brother and then do yibum. Either way, the transaction is invalid, and that is the halacha. It's as if he did nothing. All right, the Mishnah mentioned that when you have an inheritance that goes from this woman who was a shomeret yavam to the yavam, so as we said, the land goes in escrow. He cannot sell any of it. What about the fruit that's on the land? We had a machloket. Rabbi Meir said the fruit that's attached to the land also belongs to her, and you're not going to just let it rot there. Instead, he has to assess how much it's worth, and he will have to put cash value in. He could take the fruit, put the cash value in, use the cash to buy even more land, and that way it'll be there, sustainable, and it will produce future fruit that he can enjoy. That was Bimir. Chachamim, however, say that the fruit that's attached to the land, he gets to keep on his own. We ask, Amai, v'akol nechasav rachin v'arabin leketubah. Why? All of the estate, all of the property is a guarantee, a security to pay the ketubah. He's not allowed, the yavam is not allowed to use any of it. So why should he be able to keep this fruit for himself? So Amar Resh Lakish teneh shela. Resh Lakish says, you're right. We have to change the word of the Mishnah to be not shelo, but rather shela. So she keeps the fruit. She keeps not only the land, he can't sell it, but the fruit that's on it also will go to her. And like Rabbi Meir said, he will have to assess how much it is and take that amount and buy land. All right. This machloket between Rabbi Meir and Chachamim was already found earlier in the Perek, in the second Mishnah of the Perek, on Daf Ayin Tet. There, the machloket does apply, because that was not talking about a case of a yavam, but just a regular husband and wife. If the wife gets an inheritance of land during the marriage with fruit on it, in that case, the Chachamim would say that the fruit belongs to the husband, and so he gets it, because in that case, he has greater access to the inheritance. There, he can sell land that he owns, and even though everything has a lien, he will have to pay the ketubah eventually, but he can sell it if he wants. That's unlike the yavam, where we're more controlling of it, and we don't want him to do anything, not even sell the land, and even the movables here, even the fruit attached to the land, according to Chachamim, belongs to her. So that's why we're changing it here, even though we're not changing it in the earlier Mishnah. These are in fact two different cases. It could be that the word shelo here is a copy of the earlier Mishnah, and that's why Resh Lakish says, no, this is a wrong copy. In this case, it's actually different. It should be shelah. All right, next case, kenasa harehi kiishto. If once the yavam does yibum, then the yavama is like the yavam's wife. Lemay hilchata. What do you mean it's like his wife? I mean, they are married, so what does this apply to? This teaches that should they change their mind and they want to be divorced, the way to divorce is with a get, and after the get, if they change their mind again and want to remarry, he can remarry her. So let's analyze each. Megarsha beget beshita. What? If you want to get a shina, give a get. Oh, of course you do. What else would you think? Mahudetema v'yibema. Amarachamana v'adayin yibumin harishonin aleha. La tiska la beget ela b'halisa kamashmalan. Because I would have thought as follows. Since originally they were a yavama and a yavam. At that point, if they wanted to separate, they would have had to do chalitza with her. I might have thought, even if he does yibum, and now they're married, nevertheless, the designation as a yevama is still upon her, right? We still know that this marriage came from a yibum situation. And therefore, if he decides he wants to stop and not do yibum, not stop the yibum, stop the marriage, I might have thought that he has to do chalitza, and it's not enough to give a get. And that's why the Mishnah comes to say, it's like a regular wife, just like a regular wife you can give just a get, so to here, even though she was a yavama, now she's like a regular wife and you can just give a get. Okay, now machazira peshita, of course, unless it's a kohen, they can remarry. Now, isn't this obvious also? You just said it's like a regular wife, so why would you think they can't marry? Ma'odetema misva dirmada chamana ale abda. Pashta tekum ale beisur eshet ach kamashmalan. I might have thought as follows. The yavam and the yavama, it's his sister-in-law, right? It's his brother's wife. And so essentially there is a basic prohibition between this relationship. Now, if you're doing a mitzvah of yibum, fine. Then that's an exception to the rule, and you can do yibum even though it's your sister-in-law. So when he's doing a mitzvah, fine. But in this case, he already did the mitzvah, right? He already did yibum, and he decided to divorce. Fine, that's your right. But now, once you're divorced, and if you're going to remarry, the remarriage is not for the mitzvah of yibum. Don't do it twice. So I might have thought that the prohibition of your sister-in-law will now kick in, and that's why the Mishnah says machazira. It's okay. He can, in fact, marry her again, even though it used to be his sister-in-law, because he did the yibum process. That's it. Now they're good. Now, and now if you'll ask, wait a second, that logic actually sounded quite good, that this should be prohibited. They're not doing a mitzvah of yibum, so the prohibition of incest should kick in. Amar kera ulkacha lo leisha, kevan shelekacha naaset kiishto. And the answer is, when he does yibum, he takes her as a wife, fully as a wife. Once he takes her with yibum, it's a full wife, and we forget the status of her once being a yevama. Even the fact that they were once brother and sister-in-law, it becomes like a regular wife, and just like a regular wife, one can remarry after divorce. So too, they can remarry after divorce. Very interesting. בלבד שתהא כתובתה על נכסי בעלה הראשון. מה טעמה? אישה הקנו לו מן השמיים. Now, when the Yavam and Yavama do yibum, and so now they're married, it's true, it's like his wife, except for the following item, that the ketuvah will be paid from the deceased husband's estate. So even though they're like a normal husband and wife, but the Yavam does not have to pay the ketubah from his own money. He uses the estate, is all designated, that he inherits from the first husband, that pays the ketubah. What is the reason? The reason is because this wife was acquired to him from heaven. In other words, the Yavam never sought out to go marry the Yavama. Unfortunate circumstances happened that the brother died, and so he's coming in to do a mitzvah. So he never agreed to take from his own money to have to pay this ketubah. It's good enough that he's coming in performing this mitzvah of yibum. So therefore he is stepping into his deceased brother's place, and therefore the ketubah that she has to be paid should be paid by the deceased husband. He's the one that agreed to the ketubah in the first place, so let his estate pay. Why should the yavam have to pay? Okay. Nevertheless, if the deceased husband does not have an estate, he's impoverished, or it's too little, he has something, but not enough to pay the amount of the ketubah, then she does get the ketubah payment from the second husband, even though technically he really shouldn't have to, because he could say, this was given to me from heaven. I never asked for this. Nevertheless, we want this marriage to be strong and lasting, and we don't want it to be easy in his eyes to capriciously divorce his wife. Anytime he just gets angry, he says, okay, get out. If he doesn't have to pay anything, then and the estate is zero, so then the Yavam will lose nothing by just kicking her out, and therefore we want him to think twice. So it's a good idea, the rabbis think, to put a little bit of a monetary incentive or decentive to get divorcing, doing a simple divorce, since we want him to take the marriage seriously. So we say, okay, if there's no ketubah, if there's nothing in the estate, then you'll have to pay. And that way, if he has to pay, he'll think twice about divorcing, and maybe he'll go into therapy and make up with her, and then they can live happily. Okay, lo yomar la hare ketubatich. Mai vechen. The Mishnah then said that the Yavam, in the same case, he cannot take from his deceased brother's estate a certain amount of cash, put it on the table, and say, here, I'm setting this aside. This is the $50,000 that your ketubah states. Here it is on the side. Whenever the marriage ends, you can have it, and that way that frees up the rest of the estate, so the Yavam can take it and sell the land and give it away, do whatever he wants with it. You're not allowed to do that because maybe that cash will get lost and it doesn't give the wife enough security. That's what the Mishnah said first. The Mishnah continues and says, Vechen, and so too, not only in a Yavam case, even in a regular marriage, a man cannot take some part of his estate, his property, and just designate, here's some cash, I'll put it on the side in a vault, and that'll be yours at the end of the marriage, and therefore I'm taking away the lien that you have on any of the other land. He's not allowed to do that. That's the word vechen. Okay, now the Gemara is going to explain, how come you have to tell me that it applies in both of these cases? I might have thought in the case of the Yavam, where the Yavam himself did not write a ketubah. A standard ketubah form says that the husband's property is mortgaged to pay the ketubah, not only the property that he bought in the past, but any future property that he will buy also has a lien on it to pay the mortgage. So that gives her a lot of security. Now here's the thing. With the Yavam, he didn't write a ketubah. So therefore, the Yavam's own property, anything that he will buy in the future, that does not get a lien to pay the ketubah. It's only what's in the estate, and that's it. The brother is deceased, so there's not going to be any new property coming into the estate. So I might have thought only in the case of a Yavam, he cannot put aside the cash and then take the land for himself, because she does not have the security of whatever will be bought in the future. So I might think that over there, in that case, the Yavam cannot do that deal of setting it aside. But in a regular marriage, where the husband is the one writing the ketubah, and he writes, whatever I purchased in the past, and anything I will purchase in the future, all that still has a lien for you, I might think, Ema samcha da'ata. I might think that she will rely on that, and she'll say, you know what, that's fine. You can put aside that $50,000, put it in the closet over there. That'll be for my ketubah, and then you can go and sell any land that we have, and there's no lien on it, because she knows in her mind that just in case that gets lost, still any future items that he buy that he buys, she will have a lien on it. So maybe she would be okay with it. Kamash malan. That's why the Mishnah says, still, it's not good. He can't do that. Who knows if he's going to buy more land, if we're not going to buy more land. You see, the husband might always just hide his assets if they're movable items, and so she wants to know, she deserves to know that any land that he right now has, she will forever have a lien on that land, so she can be secure and collect her ketubah. Okay, geresha en la ela ketubata. Geresha in lo geresha la. Back to the case of the Yavam Yavama, they marry. The deceased husband estate goes into that escrow. Once if they get divorced one day, then she can take out of the marriage only her ketubah payment. She doesn't get the entire estate. That's the Yavam who inherits the estate. So she gets the one lump payout, some of the ketubah, and that's it. So we infer from the Mishnah that if they get divorced, then yes, she gets her share of the ketubah, and then he can take the rest. But lo gedesha, if they didn't get divorced while they're married, not so. In that case, she does not get her ketubah, and he cannot take the rest. Kamash malan kedirabi Abba. This confirms what Rabbi Abba said. If you remember, Rabbi Abba, who we thought maybe is Rav, had a baraita that said that the Yavam, is not allowed to sell any of the property of the estate because it has to be all designated for the ketubah, even if the estate is much greater than the payout of the ketubah. So we can learn from this Mishnah that a confirmation of that opinion of Rabbi Abba. Hechezira harehi kechol anashim ve'en la ela ketubata. Now, back to the case of the Yavam and Yavama. They get divorced, and then they get remarried. Now, there's two subcases here. If they get divorced and he pays her the ketubah, well, now they're separated. If they now remarry, he'll have to write a new ketubah with his property, because once he pays off the ketubah from the deceased property, he gets the entire rest of the estate, and that's it. The second marriage will have a new ketubah. But in this clause, we're talking about a case where the Yavam Yavama, they get divorced, but he didn't pay it out. Right? And maybe, before they get a chance to pay it out, they change their mind. They say, we shouldn't have gotten divorced. And he remarries her, not writing a new ketubah, but rather continuing the same terms as the old. So we say she is like all the wives, and all she has nothing other than her ketubah, meaning that she is not going to have any access to the Yavam's own property or any new ketubah, but rather she continues the same terms, that she has access to the deceased husband's estate to pay the ketubah. Okay. Hechezira maika mashmalan tanena hamegareshet haisha umachazira almenat ketubah rishona machazira. So this whole clause, what is it teaching us? I already know this from a braita, that anytime a man and a woman divorce and they get remarried, it's based on the same, and assuming that he does not pay the ketubah in the meantime, they just remarry again, it's based on the same conditions of the first marriage that he is returning her. That's the case in any regular, not a yibum case, just a regular marriage. They get divorced, they get remarried immediately before ketubah payout. It continues. So in this case of the Yavam, also it will continue. Why do you need to teach me this? Maudetema ishtohu diu katav la ketubah mineh, aval yevimto dela iu katav la hecha digersha vehadra ema ketubata mineh kamash malan. Well, I would have thought that maybe it's different. And in the case where if it's his wife, in the regular case where a regular husband and wife get divorced and then remarry, he's the one that wrote the original ketubah. So that's why when he remarries, they're not changing anything. I mean, they can change it, but they're not. If he wants to change it, he could pay the first ketubah and then he can make a new ketubah. But they're not making a new ketubah, so now we can assume that he's continuing the same terms as the first marriage. But with Yavam and Yavama, where the Yavam, did not write the first ketubah, so if he divorces and remarries, maybe we should assume that it's under new terms, and now he's going to have to write a new ketubah, and therefore his own property should be designated to pay the ketubah, and that's why the Mishnah comes to teach us that, no, even here, he basically steps in for the deceased brother, then the deceased brother's estate is what pays the ketubah, and if they divorce and get remarried, that continues the same terms as the original marriage. Amar Rav Yehuda. Now we're going to see a really interesting history of the negotiations of what's written in the ketubah and why property is mortgaged in the ketubah. So Rav Yehuda says originally it was not so. The man would just write in the ketubah, for betulah I have to give you 200, almanah 100, and they would not say that the land has a lien on it to pay. It's just whatever cash is available, like a regular oral loan, and without collateral. But the woman would not agree to such marriages. They did not feel protected. What if the guy's not going to have cash available? Or what if he hides his cash and gives it to a friend, gives it to a relative, and says, oh, sorry, I have nothing to pay you with. And so they refused to enter into such marriages, to the point that the men were getting old and could not find wives. So they had to change the deal. Ad sheba Shimon ben Shatach v'tiken kol nechasav achrayin leketubata. So Shimon ben Shatach said, we're going to write in the ketubah that all of the man's property is a guarantee to pay the marriage contract. And once the woman heard that, it's okay, now I know I'll get paid, because she can see right now at the time of the marriage that he has this much property and she has a lien on it. Even if he sells the property, she knows she can go after it and she'll get her payment. So they felt secure, and they went ahead and got married. Good. That's the statement of Rav Yehuda. We say Tanya Nameachi. We have a braita that says the same thing. This braita actually adds more steps to the history of how this came to be. Barishona hayu kotvin libtula. So the same first step. At first they wrote only cash. Here, I'll pay you from cash if I have it. If not, then you don't get anything. And the woman would not agree to that, because they didn't think that they were going to get their money at the end of the marriage, which is really important, because once they're divorced or widowed, they have nothing to use to support themselves. So they would rather not get married. So then the first step actually was that they decided the ketuvah payment, let's say it's $50,000, he would set aside the money, the husband, and deposit it in her father's house. And that way, it was guaranteed that at the end of the marriage, it was there. The husband would not even have access to it. So he'd kind of prepay, go to the father, and now she knows that she'll have it. But this didn't work well. Still now, if the husband got angry, then he would just say, go to your ketuvah, meaning he already paid it out, and it's already in her father's house, so it doesn't hurt him to divorce her, and people were being divorced too easily. Anytime he loses his cool, and that's it, he can divorce her, and basically it's similar to not having a ketubah at all, because that's the way it is. Even though when you pay for something already, you forget about it. That's it. It's already included in the budget. And therefore, he didn't feel it in his pocket to divorce her, and people were getting divorced too easily. So they made yet another stage of a takana. So they said, fine, we'll leave it in her father-in-law's house, meaning in the husband's house. So the husband would take $50,000, leave it in his own house in a special designated closet, and he'd say, listen, here is the ketuvah money. Should we ever get divorced, or should I die, here, your money is here, it's guaranteed, and therefore, right, leave my land alone. So that this would, on the one hand, give her safety, the money is there, and also it would prevent him from too easily divorcing her, because he has the money. He doesn't want the money to leave his house, even though it's designated. Still, it's something that he has. It's not already given away. But this didn't work either. Ashirot osot ota lekelatot shel kesef v'shel zahab. In a wealthy woman, they would take the money of their marriage contract, instead of just leaving it in cash, they would turn it into baskets of gold and silver, very nice, fancy baskets, and it was an item that they could actually use, instead of just keeping it as cash. So they would do that. Poor people, where their ketubah payment was not as much, was just the minimum, they could still use it to make a vessel to use as a urinal, which is also kind of a personal item, and therefore she could use it. And this was good, actually, because then it guarantees that he won't take it back, because it's an item that she uses. So this, but this was a problem. When the husband got angry, he would just say, take your basket and leave, because it was already pre-designated. So even though, yes, it wasn't in her father's house, that it was totally given, it was still in his house, but it was still set aside, designated as an item that only she would use. So he already spent the money, and it didn't hurt him financially to divorce his wife. And so men were divorcing their wives too easily anytime they got hot-headed, and it was the women were not being treated well. עד שבא שמעון בן שטח ותיקן שיהיה כותב לה כל נכסי אחראים לכתובתה, until finally, the last step as Rav Yehuda said, Shimon ben Shatach came and said he has to write her that all my land is a guarantee for the marriage contract, anywhere it is, all the land. And that is very good, because on the one hand, it's something that is stable. It's always going to be there. It's land. He can't hide it. He can't just give it to his business partner to protect the assets. Even if he sells it, she has a lien on it. She can go after the money. On the other hand, it's not already given. If he decides I have to divorce her, oh no, then I'm going to have to sell this land in order to pay the ketubah. Let me think twice. You know what? Maybe I'll forgive her, and we'll make up and continue and continue the marriage and live hopefully happily ever after. Hadran alach ha'isha, baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.